The galaxy had always been filled with whispers of danger. Wars had come and gone, empires had risen and fallen, but nothing in living memory compared to what had now emerged from the edges of the void. It began quietly. A single system went dark. No survivors, no escape pods, no signals. The Galactic Council assumed it was a civil war, or perhaps an accident, but then another system vanished, and another. Soon, entire star sectors fell silent, their beacons gone. Their worlds erased from the maps as though they had never existed. The fleets that brought this darkness were unlike anything seen before. They did not broadcast warnings. They did not demand tribute. They did not enslave. They simply arrived, and when they left, everything was ash and silence. Their ships were blacker than space itself, so dark that sensors struggled to track them. And when alien eyes looked upon them, they said it felt like staring into a living void that wanted to swallow them whole. Across the council's chambers, delegates sat in silence, their voices low and fearful. They called this enemy many things. The Shadow Armada, the Silent Hunger, the darkness between stars, yet none of them dared speak its true name, because no one knew if it even had one, but rumors spread faster than truth. Distress signals reached the edges of the galaxy, some only fragments, others ending in mid-scream. They are here, no light, no sound. The void is alive, then silence. Always silence. The hook had gripped the galaxy. In fear, ordinary people fled to core worlds. Empires pulled fleets back to defend their capitals. And in the darkest corners of space, old stories began to return, ancient tales that spoke of a time long ago when even greater civilizations had vanished into nothing. The council tried to hide the truth. They told their people it was a temporary threat, an isolated danger. But the whispers grew louder, and even the most powerful leaders began to lose faith. For the first time in thousands of years, the galaxy looked helpless, and yet somewhere, far from the core, hidden on the edge of the spiral arm, there was a world that had been silent for centuries. A world many in the galaxy dismissed as primitive, unimportant, as too small to matter. Earth humanity had grown quietly, patiently. While other species fought endless wars and stood proudly in council chambers, humanity remained apart. It had not sent ambassadors. It had not begged for trade. It had not joined any empire. Some thought Earth had fallen behind, trapped in its own solar system. Others believed it had destroyed itself long ago. A few whispered darker theories that Earth had chosen silence for a reason. For centuries, humanity had watched, expanding silently into nearby systems, hiding its colonies, masking its fleets. The galaxy forgot about them. That was the way. Earth wanted it. But now, with distress signals echoing across the stars, something was stirring. Humanity's hidden networks were alive again, listening to alien cries. Help us, please. They are burning our stars. We beg the Terrans to answer. No empire can stop them. The cries were desperate, broken, filled with fear. They traveled across hyperspace, bouncing into every listening station. Silent outpost orbiting a dead moon, a lone Terran operator listened. She sat still as the voices screamed, then cut out. Her hand trembled as she logged the transmission into Earth's hidden archives. The record joined thousands of others, each one marked with the same tag, Distress Unanswered. Her whisper was barely a breath. Do we answer, or do we stay silent? Back. In the Galactic Council, panic spread. Massive fleets that once controlled thousands of worlds now crumbled before the darkness. Weapons failed, shields shattered. Entire empires surrendered before a shot was fired because surrender seemed easier than extinction. Yet the darkness never accepted surrender. It simply consumed. In the great chamber of the council, delegates shouted over each other. Some called for retreat to the galactic core. Others demanded alliances with Earth, though most laughed at the idea. Humans. One delegate hissed, his scaled hands trembling. They are primitives. They could not even colonize their own arm. How can they help us now? But another delegate, older, with deep silver eyes, shook her head. You think they are weak because they are silent. But silence can mean patience. Silence can mean planning. The chamber fell quiet, because deep inside many of them remembered. 1,000 years ago, Earth had fought small wars with nearby species. Those wars had ended strangely not with treaties, but with those enemies vanishing from record. No one spoke of it, and eventually, no one asked. Now, the question spread like fire. Had Earth been waiting? Old stories resurfaced. Earth's soldiers were unlike any other Deathworlders forged by a planet filled with predators, disasters, and endless struggle. Others claimed Terran technology was brutal, not elegant like Council designs, but made for one purpose only: war. One ancient file buried deep in the Council archives bore a seal few had ever seen. Ultra Red Plus. It was higher than any known. Classification. Its label read: Terran Response, Protocol. No one dared open it, but rumors spread. What was inside? Why would Earth's name be tied to a secret that even the Council feared? Across the galaxy, more worlds fell. The darkness spread. Faster. Civilizations older than Earth begged for help, their voices desperate, breaking apart mid-broadcast. We will not survive the cycle. They are everywhere, Terrans. If you hear us on Earth, the question grew louder. Would humanity stay silent as it always had? Or would it finally rise and strike? In hidden bunkers, Terran admirals gathered. Their voices were low, their faces grim. Maps of the galaxy glowed before them, red zones spreading like a disease. One admiral clenched his fist. They think we are gone. They think we are silent. But we are still here. The question is not if we can fight. The question is if we choose. 2. As the darkness burned another system, a lone transmission escaped, was carried on damaged frequencies, broken and desperate. If there is anyone out there, if humanity still exists, please, for the stars, answer us. Reached Terran space. It was logged, analyzed, and stored. On Earth, deep beneath old mountains. A massive chamber lit up for the first time in centuries. Lights pulsed across consoles. Machines hummed awake. And far above Earth's skies, hidden in the blackness, something moved. Something vast the galaxy did not yet know. But humanity was no longer deaf to the cries. Whether Earth would answer with mercy or with fire was a choice waiting to be made. The stars themselves seemed to hold their breath, the archive doors closed like a pair of stone jaws, and the sound echoed down the cold corridor. And the young officer named Zixtar stood very still with the access wafer in his trembling hand. The door did not usually close like that, and the security. Lights did not usually turn from calm blue to that slow red pulse that looked like a heartbeat in danger. Zix was only a junior in the Galactic Council archives, assigned to sort old reports and repair damaged files and keep indexes clean. But tonight the index itself had pointed at something it should never have pointed at, a record sealed under. A classification most people only heard about in rumors and jokes told in bad taste late at night. A label written in harsh block letters that did not blink. Ultra Red Plus. For 5 long minutes, Zix did not move. He only listened to the hum of the lights and the soft breath of the climate systems and the distant rumble of transport trams beneath the building, and then he slid the wafer into the reader and forced his hands to stop shaking, and said the words that a mentor once said were only for drills. Archive node, That9 request open, cause continuity risk. The door accepted the lie because the door was old, and because the key inside the wafer was older. And the slab of black metal slid away with a tired sigh and revealed a single console on a low pedestal and a chair that no one had used in centuries. And on the console there was a burned-in warning that felt like a whisper in the dark. Open only when the stars go quiet. Zix sat, because there was nowhere else to go, and he touched the console. And the console woke up as if it had been sleeping. With one eye opened, and the seal on the file dissolved like frost, and a voice filled the room, not loud, not gentle, just calm in a way that made the skin along Zix's neck tighten because calm did not belong to this moment. Terran strategic memory core speaking. Record Terran, emergency response, condition to open, nightfall. If you hear this, the darkness has returned. The voice was human. It carried that old Terran tone, rough and steady, a little like sand scraping glass, and it continued without music or preface or ceremony, as if there were no time for any of those things. To the Galactic Council or any successor assembly, this is the warning you chose to forget. You will try to negotiate or run or hide or explain it away. You will be brave in the daylight and quiet at night. Then you will wonder if help still exists on the edge of the spiral. It does. But you must follow the protocol. Cede operational command to Terran command when condition nightfall is confirmed. Delay kills civilizations. Zix stared at the lines of text flowing beneath the voice. Simple rules written in simple words, and every rule looked like a blade. Do not declare the darkness by name. It listens. Do not broadcast troop movements or evacuation paths. It hunts. Noise. When you see black holes that sensors cannot find, you are already late. Transmit coordinates to the following beacons, and then go silent. Wait. If we answer, the sky will change. The coordinates scrolled like falling rain. Zix copied them, because copying was what archivists did when they were afraid, and then the voice changed and became the sound of war. And a very old recording began to play, and it filled the room with the color of fire. The camera looked out. From the bridge of a ship with Terran marks that Zix had never seen in any council library, heavy lines, thick armor, functional and brutal like a fist. In the space outside the viewports was a sea of black ships that drank the light. The Terran guns fired in long bright lances that looked like spears thrown by angry suns. And the black ships broke and folded, and then did a thing that made Zix's stomach twist. They flowed. It's not like metal, not like matter, but like night. Moving, and they surrounded the Terran vessel, and they swallowed it, and then something flared at the Terran core. A white star, a controlled sun. And the night recoiled, and the recording cut hard to silence. A final line of text appeared. Nightfall returns. Do not ask if humanity survived. Ask if you can wait long enough for the answer. The console went dark. The room felt smaller. Zix realized he was holding his breath and let it out in a long, shaky sigh. The whispers of the past, the forbidden jokes, the late-night rumors about Earth, all of them pressed close now. He thought of the star maps he had watched the last few months. All the systems blinking out like candles in wind. The way the council wrote small, careful statements and said large, empty things. The way the corridors outside this room smelled like fear. Something moved behind him. Zix spun and almost fell out of the chair, but it was only Supervisor Merritt. Her gray crest pulled tight, her eyes pale and tired. She looked at the open console, and then at him, and then back at the door, and she shut the door with a gentle touch, and locked it twice. You are not the first, she said in a quiet voice that meant, do not interrupt. Every time the lights of the rim begin to go out, someone in our line disobeys the rules and opens that file, and every time, the same argument begins in the council, and the same fear holds the chamber by the throat. Zix swallowed. Happens to the one who opens it, usually? Merritt gave a small, humorless smile. They are promoted out of the way, or fired, or they leave on their own. But the real question is not what happens to us. The question is whether we transmit those coordinates and whether we yield. As the protocol says, because the Council does not like to yield, not to anyone, and especially not to Terrans who have been silent for so long that people call them legends or ghosts. Zix looked back at the console. The voice said the darkness listens. Got Donna name it. We never named it, Merritt whispered. Called it different things each era and hoped the new name would be luck. It was not. Did we ever transmit? Merritt closed her eyes. Once. A very long time ago, before I was born. Before. My mentor was born. A signal went to one of those beacons. The council said it was unauthorized. They dismissed the officer who sent it. Nothing happened. For months, nothing happened. And then the maps started to change. The wrong way. Systems that were marked as dead began to flicker with life again. Refugee signals appeared where there should have been none. We do not know what happened between, only that something moved. In the dark, that was not the darkness. The council buried the records. They said it was coincidence. They closed the file. The one who sent the signal died very quietly. Zix felt his throat tighten. Hear it again, the calm Terran voice. If we answer, the sky will change. He thought of the terrified transmissions that ended in mid-scream. He thought of the charts on his wall where he had drawn red lines and then stopped drawing because there were too many. We should send the coordinates, Zix said. Merritt nodded once. I agree, but not from here. This building sings to the council and a dozen channels, and the council sings to 100 ears of 100 empires. The protocol says send and go silent. You must use somewhere old and somewhere deaf. The deep relay under the river, Zix said, because he had grown up in these halls and he knew where the bones were. It is still attached, but no one cares for it. Merritt's eyes warmed. Bring the wafer. And bring your fear. It will keep you from being careless. They left the room with the door locked, and the light still pulsing like a slow warning heart, and they walked the narrow stairs, and then the older stairs, and then the tunnel where the walls were damp and the lights were not lights but old chemical lamps that hissed. They reached the deep relay, and it was exactly as Zix remembered from a training tour. A wide round room with a low hum and a ring of dead consoles, and in the center, a little pedestal with a little slot for a little wafer that everyone said no. One used. Merritt placed her palm on the pedestal, and Zix slid the wafer. And the room woke the way sleeping animals wake when they smell a storm. Lines crawled across the far wall, and the old transmitter aligned itself with a cough that sounded almost human. Do it, Merritt said. Zix sent the coordinates. He did not add names or greetings or claims. He sent the numbers in the silence. Exactly as the protocol demanded, and the relay breathed out a thin beam into the deep veins of space. And then it fell still, and the hum lowered again. And then a very small light came on above the slot, a color Zix had never seen in this system. A soft Terran green. He and Merritt looked at each other and did not speak. The green light remained. They went back up the tunnels in silence, and came out into the wide corridor where the night shift staff moved like ghosts, trying not to disturb other ghosts. And they reached Merritt's office and closed the door and put a heavy case against it because sometimes old rituals make people feel safer. Merritt poured water, and Zix drank, and it tasted like metal and dust. What do we do now? He asked. We wait, Merritt said. And we prepare for the council to realize something has moved under their feet. The council realized it before. The next dawn, at first it was a rumor in the internal channel for security officers. Unknown handshake detected. Old key pattern. Origin uncertain. Then it hit the council board, where delegates pretended to be calm while their assistants ran behind them with tablets heavy with bad news. And then it reached the speaker, and the speaker called an emergency session with the little hammer that only came down when whole regions burned. The chamber filled early. Zix sat in the gallery above with a bag of notes and a stomach that could not decide if it wanted food or to tie itself into a knot. Merritt sat beside him, hands folded, eyes half closed. And she looked like someone sitting in a quiet park except her jaw. Muscles kept flexing like strong wire. The speaker struck the desk. We have reports from the rim, he said in the tone. Leaders use when every word is a bridge over a cliff. Other 6 systems were lost. The dark fleets moved without warning. Evacuations failed. We mourn the dead of Isith Chain and Talarum Verge. There was a low breath from the chamber. It sound a crowd makes when no one wants to be the first to cry. And the speaker continued. We have also detected an external signal matching very old patterns in our archives. It appears to be Terran. This chamber has not recognized Terran authority for many centuries. The last official contact predates this council. I am asking the room now, shall we respond? And if we respond, what will we say? The words floated up under the dome, and the delegates sat like stones in water, and then they broke into sound. Not speech, just sound, because the room did not know yet if it was supposed to fear Terrans or pray to them. Some shouted that this was a trap, that the darkness could mimic old codes. Some laughed nasty small laughs, and called Earth a myth. used to frighten children into obedience. Some very old delegates did not speak at all, because their faces already said we remember. Zix looked down at the floor below and saw a figure he did not recognize. At tall for his species, skin like polished slate, the lines of a soldier made older by loss. He stood and waited, and the speaker, grateful for anything that looked like order, pointed to him. "I am Envoy Thalenvar. A third chair from Krail Dominion," the figure said. "We lost half our border worlds before the Council drafted the second statement of reassurance, and then we lost the other half before the third. We have no illusions left, and I will not spend more lives on pride. The darkness is not a state, not a species, not an empire. It is a condition. When it arrives, you do not negotiate. You survive it if someone stronger pulls you out. If the old code is Terran, then I vote we answer, and I vote we cede what the protocol demands we cede." Zix read the list of places and felt his skin go cold because he knew two of them by heart, Isith Chain and Talarum Verge. Places burned so clean that even ghosts had nowhere to stand, and yet the message marked them as if they were theaters, as if something about their empty space mattered. "Part 3, Merritt said softly, "not as a title, but as a line of fate. The Silent Armada." Zix looked up at the dome of the archive and imagined a fleet that wore night like a cloak, a fleet that blocked starlight and made predators turn away, a fleet that had waited on the edge of the spiral for someone to remember the old warning and send the old coordinates. And he knew that in 3 days the galaxy would see nothing and feel everything. And afterward, even the stubborn would admit that humanity had not gone, had not died, had not fallen behind. Humanity had waited. Outside the station, space continued to be large and cold and indifferent, but somewhere far beyond the mapped lanes and amid the quiet ice of dim suns, engines that were not supposed to exist woke up and moved, and every living thing that had learned to fear the darkness felt for one moment a small, shameful thing called hope. The galaxy had not known silence like this in living memory. For 3 full days, the council chambers argued and panicked. Empires pulled fleets back, and whole populations prayed to stars that had already gone dark. Yet in the quiet corners of the archives, Zix and Merritt counted the hours since the Terran message. The reply had been simple: 3 days. The sky will change. No one in the council believed it at first. Some claimed it was a trick by the darkness itself. Others said it was a remnant of an ancient human transmission bouncing around hyperspace. A few whispered in secret that Earth had never been destroyed, only waiting, and so the clock ticked down. The 3rd day arrived with no sign of anything. Refugee ships still poured into the core. Dark fleet still advanced, consuming system after system. The council gathered again in the great chamber, their voices sharp with anger and fear. They promised action. A scaled delegate roared, pounding the desk with his claws. "Where is this Terran Armada? Where is the salvation they speak of?" "Perhaps they were bluffing," another said coldly. "Perhaps humanity died centuries ago, and these are only echoes." The speaker raised his hand for quiet, but the delegates would not listen. The air shook with argument, until one trembling aide burst into the chamber with eyes wide and pale. "Honored Council," he gasped. "Long-range stations have seen something." Chamber froze. On the edge of Talarum Verge, where the darkness had devoured every world, the sensors caught movement. Not the hungry black holes of the enemy, but new shadows. Shadows that did not consume light, they bent it. At first, the watchers thought it was a trick of failing instruments. But then one of the shadows shifted, and the faint outline of a colossal ship took form. Its armor was scarred with burns older than empires. Its profile was brutal and angular, not graceful like council fleets, but forged for survival. Then another appeared, another, dozens of them. Then hundreds. They were enormous. Some the size of moons, each silent, each cloaked in void, until the moment they chose to move. No lights shone on their hulls. No signals betrayed their presence. They simply existed, patient and cold, as though they had been waiting all along in the empty dark. The council's live feed faltered as the ships spread across the dead system like silent giants. Someone whispered into the chamber microphone, "It's them, Terrans. The silent Armada." The darkness did not ignore them. Black fleets swept across Talarm Verge, shrieking through subspace, moving faster than thought. Their formations closed. In seeking to consume the Terran intruders, for a long moment, the galaxy watched in breathless suspense. The Terran Armada did not move. It waited silent as the black ships closed around them, and then, without warning, the stars lit up. Terran. Weapons unleashed fire brighter than suns. Massive beams of white energy tore through the darkness, punching holes in holes that had never been breached. Missiles streaked across void, moving in impossible arcs, guided by something beyond alien science. For the first time in centuries, the darkness faltered. The silent watchers across the galaxy stared at their feeds as the impossible unfolded. Black ships shattered, their bodies crumbling into ash. The darkness recoiled, breaking formation, struggling to regroup. And in that moment of chaos, the Terrans advanced. Across 1,000 worlds, citizens huddled around projection screens. Refugees wept openly. Children asked their parents if the monsters were finally dying. The council chamber fell into stunned silence. Even the loudest critics could not speak. "They fight," whispered Envoy Thalon Var, his slate-gray face pale. "With awe, they truly fight it." Zix gripped the railing of the gallery so tightly his hands ached. This was no rumor, no archive file, no hidden whisper. This was real. The Terran Armada existed, and it was striking where all others had failed. And still, the Terrans did not speak. No transmissions, no boasts, only silence and fire. Hours later, the feeds cut out. The system fell dark once more. The council erupted into panic. What happened? Did they fall? Did they win? But no one knew. The Terrans had not answered, had not reported. They had simply fought, and then gone silent again. Yet the aftermath spoke louder than words. Refugee ships that had been trapped in Talarm Verge began broadcasting distress signals again. Survivors crawled from bunkers on worlds thought dead. Life flickered where the darkness had left only silence. The impossible had happened. The darkness could be pushed back. In the council archives, Zix replayed the battle feed over and over, studying the Terran holes, the scars that told of wars. Older than history, the strange way their ships vanished after firing, leaving only the faint shimmer of distortion in space. He whispered to himself. Not sure if it was hope or fear. They've been waiting all this time, watching, preparing. Merritt stood behind him, her eyes cold, but her voice steady. The question is simple. Do they fight for us or only for themselves? Far beyond council eyes, in the void between stars, the Terran Armada drifted silently, engines cold, weapons quiet. Their hulls bore no flags, no signals. Only the faint scars of battles fought in forgotten centuries, and in the heart of the lead supercarrier. A voice echoed in the dark command deck. Phase 1 complete. The galaxy has seen. Prepare for Phase 2. The silence of space swallowed the words, but the stars seemed to tremble. The galaxy had seen the impossible. The black fleets faltered before Terran fire. Refugees spoke of hope for the first time in centuries, yet no answers came from Earth. The Terran Armada had appeared, fought, and vanished back into silence. The council chamber filled with questions, but humanity offered none. Still whispers spread. If humanity could hurt the darkness, could they also destroy it? It began with silence again. A lone colony in the outer spiral, forgotten by most maps, had been left defenseless. Its skies were torn by shadows, the darkness arriving without. Warning, their planetary defenses fired in vain, missiles vanishing into void. Families crowded in bunkers, listening to the screams on the comnet, every voice ending mid-sentence. Then, silence. The black ships swarmed overhead, blotting out the stars. Just as the colony's final transmission was about to fade, the sky cracked open. A ripple like glass shattering swept across orbit. Out of nothing, Terran warships decloaked. Their hulls bore scars of wars never recorded in council archives. Some were small hunter craft, sleek and silent. Others were massive destroyers, their guns like towers pointed at the heavens, and at their center, a colossal vessel longer than cities. The engines glowing like suns moved forward. The battle began without words. Terran weapons roared. Missiles streaked into the black hulls, detonating with a white light that burned through void. Plasma beams lanced across orbit, cutting enemy vessels in half. For the first time, survivors on the ground saw the darkness not as gods or monsters, but as prey. The Council, watching through hidden observation relays, saw something different. From their own fleets, Council ships fought with formation, discipline, and order. Terran ships fought like predators. Each vessel moved as though it were alive, striking where the enemy was weakest, then fading back into silence. They did not chase glory or honor, they fought to kill. One Terran destroyer let itself be swarmed, shields cracking under the black tide. The last moment, its hull split open, releasing a storm of drones that screamed into the enemy formation, tearing it apart from the inside. Another Terran ship drifted dark and powerless, a lure. The black ships converged, sensing weakness, only for the vessel to ignite its engines and unleash a nova burst that vaporized everything within reach, including itself. Humanity's strategy was clear. They would sacrifice anything, anyone, to break the enemy. The black fleets recoiled. Entire formations dissolved, leaving shattered husks burning in orbit. Refugees on the planet's surface watched the sky brighten as firestorms of wreckage rained down. For the first time in centuries, the darkness retreated. The council feed went wild. Delegates shouted over each other, half in celebration, half in fear. They can fight them. One voice cried. They are monsters themselves. Another spat. Who will they fight next? The darkness or us? But the people of the outer spiral colony had no doubts. For them, humanity was salvation. The chamber hissed at the word seed. The chamber always hissed at that word. The speaker recorded it and called for others, and a long, thin debate began, while the stars outside moved on their own, not caring for speeches. During a lull, a soft signal reached the private loop the speaker wore in his ear. And he flinched and then straightened, and his face changed in a way Zix had never seen. The way a person changes when a story they secretly believed in becomes solid in their hands. He raised his voice. We have a reply, he said. Not to us. To the beacon. The chamber froze. The speaker did not play the whole message, because the whole message would not have helped the debate. The whole message was one line, one simple line that did not ask, did not argue, did not threaten, did not promise. It only put a stake in the ground of the future. Terran Command acknowledges condition nightfall. Response window opens in 72 standard hours. Do not speak our name on open channels. Hold your lines. Evacuate only when darkness closes. We will. Move in the silence. The message ended. The chamber remained very still and suddenly very small. Zix felt the words like cold water poured over fire. Not because they put out the fire, but because they meant someone had a plan and had used it before. 72 hours. Someone whispered, They ask us to hold our lines for 72 hours. We barely hold them for 7. But the voice caused a shift. Delegates, who had never once raised hands for surrender, raised hands for yielding. Operational command to an authority not in the room. Others argued, but with less force, because arguing against a promise that carried weight under each syllable felt like arguing with gravity. The council technician asked, very politely, if the chamber would approve the Terran protocol, the act, inside the ultra-red file that said, when nightfall comes. Seed command to Terran coordination for the duration of the response. The chamber approved by the thin width of fear. The vote did not end the struggle. It only moved it. Feet hurried. In corridors, officers sent encrypted packets to ships that had already burned. Some leaders told their people to pray. Others told them to load and leave. But a new kind of signal began to run through the networks, a pattern of empty space between pulses. A rhythm like footsteps taken by someone who did not want to be heard, but wanted you to know they were there. while council fire burned and cooled. Zix and Merritt went back to work, because work is where courage goes when it cannot speak. They reviewed the old Terran data that the file allowed them to see now that the protocol was active. And they found maps with holes where Terrans had fought before. Holes in history that explained the blank spots on their star charts, the lost sectors everyone assumed were formed by accident or natural collapse. They found training notes for Allied commanders written in that same calm voice. Little things like, leave one channel clean, and do not bunch your refugees, and a panicked fleet is tastier than a brave one. Brutal advice written without insult. Like an engineer talking about pressure and heat between the notes, there were small pieces of story that sank like stones in the mind. A refugee convoy that had gone silent and then turned up alive inside a Terran sphere where black holes could not enter. A planetary city that had escaped annihilation by going dark and staying dark for 8 days while something massive passed. Overhead, and the front of the building peeled away like paper and then stopped because the power died and the city did not scream. And the recording discontinued at day 9 because the city began to sing again. On the second night, a message, tagged Civic, appeared in Zix's personal queue, unsigned. You opened the file, it said. Good. If you want to live long enough to regret the attention, meet me at the tram underpass at Third Bell. Merritt told him to go, and not to be obvious about it, and also to be obvious enough that anyone watching would note the innocence of his errand. And Zix did what she said because he had realized there was a game and he did not know the rules. He reached the underpass and found Envoy Thalanvar, waiting there with his slate skin and his soldier stance and a cloak that looked like he had forgotten to sleep. You sent the coordinates, Thalan said without introduction. Zix did not answer. That was brave, Thalan said, or foolish. And the line between these two things is often only drawn by results. The Council will use you or bury you depending on what happens next, and I am not here to warn you of that because you can see it already. I am here to tell you that my scout went to one of the listed places a month ago, before the enemy grew so bold, and my scout saw something they could not explain. Zix leaned forward despite himself. What did they see? A beacon that did not exist? A place in space that twisted light like a river after rain? And then they saw letters along a hole that should have been empty space. It's letters in human script, and then their ship lost drive for exactly 10 seconds. And when the drive returned, they were facing empty stars, and the beacon was not there. And a voice in their cabin said, You are within a cordon. Make no log. We will not harm you. Turn back. The voice did not come from the radio. It came from the air. Zix felt his mouth go dry. And the scout turned back. Yes, Thalan said. Because the smart live to tell the story. I tell you this because when 72 hours pass, and when nothing visible happens, you must keep telling people to hold, because the kind. A thing that helps us does not like to be seen until it decides to be seen. Do you think they will come? Zix asked, and he hated the begging sound in his own words. Thalan's eyes softened. I think they already moved when they acknowledged. I think the sky will change, which is what their file promised. I think the darkness will learn again that silence can also hold a sword. They parted with no more words because words felt like little stones next to the mountain that was approaching unseen. The first change came not as a light in the sky, but as an absence inside the enemy. On the third day, a cluster of black fleets moved toward Yargel Bend, a wide curve of stars full of refugees and small escorts in one stubborn defense platform that had no reason to fight except that it was built to fight and did not know how. To run, the fleets moved in their usual hungry pattern, and then the pattern shuddered like an animal smelling smoke, and then broke, and then reformed, and then hesitated, and then did the thing they had never done in all the recordings. They turned. A way sensors could not show why. The only data was a faint change in background noise, as if someone had laid a thin blanket across the normal song of the universe. And the fleets did not like the new note in that song, so they turned and chose an easier music. The second change came as a mistake that saved a world. A council courier, overloaded, failed to mute a channel and whispered a prayer for his daughter without knowing the words were going out on a line. The darkness liked to follow. The black ships moved toward him like sharks, and then stopped, and then drifted apart, and then two of them collided. A small accident. Meaningless, except that it left a hole in their wall where escorts slipped through and reached. A mining habitat that should have died, but did not. The recordings showed nothing. The escorts reported nothing. A long time later, one pilot admitted that he had seen for a single beat a shape between the black ships. A shape so large his brain refused to scale it. A shadow that cast a shadow. And then it vanished, and he decided not to mention it because it sounded like fear making pictures on the inside of his eyes. The third change came as a message not sent to the Council. It's not sent to any empire, not sent to any leader. It appeared in the deep relay where Zix and Merritt had stood, and it was encoded for archivists. It said only update your public history with the following recommendations. And the recommendations were 7 rules about evacuations. About what? Not to say about when to fight, about where to run. And each rule was so obvious in hindsight that Zix wanted to bang his head against the console because if they had known these rules last year, whole stretches of the map would still glow. Merritt looked at him and touched his arm. Make the changes, she said. If anyone asks, say an old file demanded a maintenance patch. Zix pushed the update across the public networks, and 3 worlds avoided a mistake. They had almost made because the new rules sat at the top of the emergency instructions where everyone could see them. The 72 hours ticked down when the counter reached 0. Nothing exploded, nothing flashed, nothing declared itself. And the impatient in the council began to speak again because impatience loves a microphone. But Zix and Merritt and Thalon and the pilots who had slipped through the accidental hole and the refugees who had watched the black fleets turn away, for no reason, stayed very still. Because they knew that something had shifted, and that things that move in silence do not count time the way speeches do. That night, if night can be measured on a station that never darkens, a final packet arrived at the deep relay, a thing, with coordinates and timings and one line for the council that would appear on the speaker's desk when he sat down, a line both gentle and absolute. 3 days from now, the sky will change in places marked A through H. Do not send fleets there. Do not send cameras. Hold your lines. If you fail to hold, then next time we will not warn you. Yet humanity still did not speak. No transmissions, no declarations, no alliances. The Terran Armada simply gathered its dead, reclaimed its ships, and vanished again to the Council. This was more terrifying than the darkness itself. A silent power, unmatched, choosing when and where to strike. To no one. Envoy Thalon Var stood in the council chamber and spoke words that silenced the arguments. You ask if humanity will fight for you, he said. But the truth is simple. They will fight for survival. If you are lucky, your survival will lie in the same path. In the archives, Zix replayed the colony's last transmission, the terrified voices, the shadows. And then the moment when Terran guns turned the void into fire, he leaned back in his chair, eyes wide, whispering to himself. They fight as if they've done this before, long ago, against the same enemy. Merritt's voice came from behind him, low and grim. And if that is true, then the darkness has faced humanity once before, and it did not win. Across the void hidden deep in Terran command channels, a single order passed between ships. Phase 2 begins. The enemy bleeds. Now we strike where it hurts. The darkness had met its first defeat, but humanity was only beginning. The galaxy was not used to hope. For generations, the darkness had been absolute. Wherever its fleets descended, systems vanished, signals ended, and survivors turned into myths. No empire, no armada, no alliance had ever forced it back. But then came the Terrans. The Council had watched them fight in silence, warship decloaking in dead space, unleashing fire, then vanishing without a word, a fleet tearing through. Black holes like predators on the hunt, and then disappearing as if it had never been there. Earth had not spoken to the galaxy, had not explained itself. But the results were undeniable. For the first time in centuries, the darkness retreated, and with that retreat came something even more dangerous than fear-hope, reports filtered. In from refugee convoys. Survivors spoke of black fleets that no longer attacked with perfect precision. Some described confusion among the enemy, formations breaking apart as though something unseen was disturbing them. Others swore they saw darkness vessels hesitate as if afraid. The council refused to believe such rumors. The darkness was not supposed to falter. It was endless, eternal, unstoppable, but Zix, sitting in the archives, replayed the battle records 100 times. He slowed the images until the frames nearly cracked, and he saw it clearly. Terran weapons worked. They did not erase the enemy instantly, but they cut deeper than anything the galaxy had ever built. The darkness bled. Then came the moment no one expected. A Terran signal brief, encoded and carried across secure council lines. It was the first direct transmission from humanity in centuries. It was only a sentence. The enemy is not immortal. Prepare to fight. The words spread like wildfire. Civilians on core worlds repeated them as prayers. Soldiers on refugee escorts carved them into their armor. Even the council delegates who still feared Terran motives could not ignore the truth. For the first time, strategies shifted. Instead of fleeing blindly, ships regrouped. Instead of abandoning every world, colonies prepared bunkers and weapons. A change swept through the galaxy because if the enemy could falter once, it could falter again. The council chamber erupted with arguments. "They give us hope only to control us," shouted one delegate. "They have already saved more lives than we have in years," replied another. Envoy Thalinvar stood and silenced the chamber with a single statement. "Terrans do not speak unless they mean it. If they say the enemy bleeds, then it bleeds. The only question is whether you have the courage to fight beside them." The room went still, because courage had been missing for so long that most had forgotten what it felt like. The victories did not go unanswered. The darkness, wounded for the first time in living memory, changed its tactics. Instead of attacking at random, its fleets began to converge, massing in terrifying numbers at the galactic corporate edges. Entire sectors turned black with movement. Observers reported that the fleets no longer moved silently. They shrieked across hyperspace with frequencies that broke sensors and rattled bones. It was not retreat, it was fury. The galaxy braced for retaliation. In the shadows, Terran command networks pulsed with activity. The silent Armada gathered, not in defense, but in preparation. The Terran admirals had learned what the Council was only beginning to understand. The enemy could be broken. It was not a god. It was not infinite. It was prey. And humanity had hunted predators before. Zix sat in the archives, staring at the simple Terran message again. The enemy is not immortal. The words would not leave him. They were not just a declaration. They were a challenge. Merritt stood behind him, her face pale but resolute. "If the galaxy believes them," she whispered, "then everything changes. Fear no longer rules us." And fear was the darkness's greatest weapon. Across space, black fleets howled as they gathered. Their fury shook the stars, but in the silence of Terran command, a single order was given. Phase 3. Strike at the heart. The darkness had faltered. Humanity would make sure it never recovered. The council chamber was supposed to be a sanctuary. It was a place where empires spoke, where decisions that shaped billions of lives were made. Its marble floors and glowing banners were meant to inspire calm. But on this day, calm was impossible. The chamber burned with arguments, voices raised so high they drowned out the steady hum of the translation systems. The delegates no longer spoke like rulers. They shouted like frightened citizens, because the darkness was gathering. Reports screamed of entire sectors swallowed in a single sweep. Worlds that once trusted in council protection were now gone. Their stars nothing more than silent coordinates. The enemy was no longer striking. Randomly it was converging. The black fleets were moving with purpose, massing in the galactic coreward regions, and in the council chamber, fear took on the shape of fire. Terrans shouted a delegate with crimson scales, his claws gouging the surface of his desk. "You would have us hand them power. They are predators." They strike in silence. They answer to no one. How do we know they will not turn on us once the darkness is gone? They saved the outer spiral. Another shot back, eyes burning. Our fleets ran, theirs fought. Would you rather beg the darkness for mercy? It has none. The chamber erupted again. Some wanted to embrace humanity as saviors. Others wanted to destroy them before their silence became dominance. Above them all, the speaker struggled to keep order, but his hammer struck uselessly against the noise. Even the chamber guards, stone-faced veterans of dozens of conflicts, shifted uneasily at the sound of their leaders breaking down. Then Envoy Thalon Var rose. His slate-gray skin glistened in the chamber's light, his posture sharp, unyielding. When he spoke, his voice cut through the chaos. You argue as if we still have the luxury of choice. We do not. The darkness is not an empire. It does not negotiate. It does not enslave. It erases. If the Terrans fight it, then we follow them not because we trust them, but because they are the only ones who can stand against it. His words struck the room like a weapon. For a moment, silence reigned. Even those who despised humanity could not deny the truth of his statement. Then came the shock. A transmission arrived, brief and encrypted, delivered directly to the speaker's console. It was from the Terrans. Their first message to the council? Itself, it was not a plea. It was not a request. It was a command. Asterisk, asterisk, Phase 3 begins. The silent Armada will strike the enemy's core. To succeed, you will obey 3 conditions. Cede operational authority in all sectors marked red. Hold your fleets where stationed. Do not redeploy. Do not attempt to follow us. Failure will cost you worlds. Decide quickly. Asterisk, asterisk, the chamber froze. Delegates stared at the words, their eyes wide. To cede operational authority was unthinkable. It meant surrendering command of entire fleets to an outside power. It meant placing survival in Terran hands. The chamber erupted once more. But this time, the fear was deeper. They would make themselves our masters. One delegate cried, "They already are." Another whispered bitterly, "They cannot be trusted. They are our only chance." Arguments turned to accusations. Old rivalries flared. One delegate hurled a data slate across the chamber. Others threatened to withdraw their fleets altogether. The speaker struck his hammer until the marble cracked beneath it. Above it all, Zik sat in the gallery with Merritt, watching history unravel. He whispered, almost to himself, "This is what the Terrans wanted, not words, not allies. Silence broken only by obedience." Merritt's gaze was grim. "And if the Council refuses, the galaxy burns." At last, when the chamber had screamed, itself hoarse, the speaker rose. His voice trembled, but his words carried weight. "We have no choice. We cede authority. The Terrans will lead this war, not because we trust them, not because we love them, but because we want to live." The chamber shook with outrage. Some delegates stormed out, others wept openly, few exhausted, simply slumped in their seats. But the decision was made. The Council, for the first time in its long history, had surrendered its command. Outside the chamber, whispers spread like fire. On the streets of the core worlds, citizens asked the same questions their leaders had feared to voice. What if the Terrans did not give command back? What if they were not saviors, but conquerors? In waiting, yet, when the broadcasts replayed, showing Terran ships burning the darkness into ash, those doubts were drowned in a single truth. They fought, they won. Far beyond the Council's sight, the Terran Armada moved in silence, engines flaring only for moments before vanishing again. Their next target was the heart of the enemy, the black core where the darkness was strongest, in the depths of a Terran supercarrier. Admirals studied maps painted in red, their faces carved from stone. The Council yields. Good. The hunt begins. Galaxy had surrendered its chains of command. Humanity now held the reins, and as the darkness gathered for its counterstrike, the stars themselves seemed to flicker, waiting for the fire to come. The galaxy trembled. For weeks the darkness had devoured without pause, its black fleets sweeping like storms. Yet now, for the first time in memory, it faced resistance that it could not consume. The Terrans had struck. Entire formations of the enemy were left in ruins, and whole sectors whispered of victories no one had dared imagine. Refugees sang of humanity's fire. Soldiers prayed to fight under Terran command. But the darkness was not defeated, it was enraged. And when the darkness grew enraged, entire regions burned. The retaliation began without warning. 100 Council border worlds were assaulted in a single night. Whole fleets were obliterated before they could broadcast a single signal. Stars dimmed beneath the crushing advance. The Council, leaderless and fractured, screamed for help. The throne of the galaxy, the Council itself, was now under siege. The Council homeworld, seat of empires, had always been thought untouchable. Its defenses were the greatest in known space. Dozens of fortified moons, planetary shields powered by suns, fleets stationed so thickly that the skies looked like iron. But when the darkness came, those defenses were like paper before flame. Black ships arrived in waves, their hulls drinking light. Council fleets opened fire, lances of plasma and storms of missiles filling the void. None of it mattered. Weapons vanished into the void. Shields folded like thin glass. The darkness broke through, pouring into orbit, turning moons into ash. For the first time, the Council's throne shook. Just when despair began to choke the galaxy, the void above the Council homeworld split open. A shadow emerged, not the enemy, but something older, something greater. A Terran vessel unlike any seen before, so vast that it blocked the light of the system's star. It was not a ship. It was a moving fortress, supercarrier, longer than continents. With weapons towers like mountains and engines burning like suns, its arrival silenced the darkness. The black fleets faltered, as if they remembered something buried deep in their collective memory. And then the Terran supercarrier struck. Thousands of gun batteries roared at once, filling the sky with fire. Entire enemy squadrons were vaporized. In seconds, drones poured from its bathed swarms of steel and fury that sliced through the void. Escort warships decloaked all around it, smaller compared to the Titan but vast to Council eyes. The throne of the galaxy had found its guardian. For the first time, the Council saw the darkness retreat not from weakness, but from fear. The black fleets withdrew in broken waves, dragging their ruined vessels into hyperspace. The Council chamber, shaken and battered, filled with stunned silence. Delegates watched the battlefields in awe, their arguments forgotten. They can be stopped, one whispered. Not by us, another replied softly. Only by them. The throne still stood, but it was no longer the Council's. The galaxy knew who had saved it. In the archives, Zix replayed the footage of the supercarrier again and again. Each frame filled him with awe and dread. Scars on its hull spoke of wars no Council record had ever kept. They've done this before, he whispered. Merritt stood beside him, her expression hard. Yes, and if they've done it before, then perhaps the darkness has never truly been defeated. Perhaps it always comes back. And perhaps humanity has always been the answer. Zix shivered. Then why did they wait so long? Merritt's eyes narrowed. Because they don't fight to protect us. They fight to end it. And they only move when the galaxy is on the edge of death. As the Council rebuilt its defenses, one truth became clear. Its throne was shattered. The Council might still sit in its chamber, but its power had been broken. The galaxy no longer looked to its leaders for salvation. They looked to Earth, far above the throne world. The Terran supercarrier drifted, its weapons still smoking, its engines quiet. On its bridge, a Terran admiral gave the next order in a calm voice. The enemy bleeds. Now we break its heart. The final strike was coming. The darkness had felt fear. And humanity was ready to finish the war. The galaxy had been drowning in silence and fear for centuries. The darkness consumed worlds without mercy, leaving nothing but cold stars and dead systems. Every empire had tried and failed to resist. Every throne had fallen. Every voice had been silenced until the Terrans struck. From the edge of forgotten space, they emerged with fire. The silent Armada burned through black fleets. A Terran supercarrier had shattered the enemy above the Council's own throne world. The galaxy had seen what no one believed possible, the darkness, retreating. But humanity was not finished. The Council whispered of survival. Refugees prayed for mercy. Yet the Terrans prepared for something greater. They would not stop with defense. They would not wait for the darkness to strike again. Humanity was preparing to deliver the final blow, and the galaxy broken. Terrified and hopeful, held its breath. From hidden staging grounds, the silent Armada revealed itself in full. Hundreds of warships, some as large as moons, decloaked across multiple sectors. Their hulls bore scars of wars so old that even the archives did not name them. Their silence was more terrifying than the darkness itself. In every council feed, the same Terran broadcast repeated, "The enemy's heart beats in the void. We go now to end it. Hold your lines, do not follow. If you see the sky burn, you will know we struck true." The message was clear. Humanity was not asking for allies. They were commanding the galaxy to stand aside, and the galaxy obeyed. Enemy's core was a place no scout had returned from. A cluster of black suns, each radiating shadows that devoured light. Ships that entered vanished without a trace. It was the place civilizations feared to name. Into that void, the Terran Armada went, at the vanguard. The Terran supercarrier cut through the black tides like a god of war. Its escorts formed wings of steel, firing in coordinated bursts that lit up the void. Swarms of drones poured forth, weaving through enemy formations like fire through dry grass. The darkness shrieked. Not in words, but in hyperspace frequencies that made stars quiver and bones ache. Whole fleets of black ships converged, countless. In number, trying to smother the intruders. But humanity pressed on. The battle was chaos. Black ships surged in endless waves. Terran warships responded with weapons never seen in Council, arsenals nova bombs that collapsed space itself, gravity. Spears that tore holes in fleets. Energy beams so bright they etched scars across stars. Each Terran vessel fought like a predator unleashed. Some sacrificed themselves to create openings. Others vanished into cloak, only to reappear inside the heart of enemy formations. For the first time in memory, the darkness screamed in pain. Entire swarms dissolved. Fleets that once moved with perfect coordination faltered and broke. The enemy was not invincible, could be destroyed. From distant systems, Council relays caught fragments of the battle. Broken signals, flashes of fire, distorted Terran commands. Civilians gathered in silence, eyes fixed on trembling screens. Soldiers gripped their weapons, praying for victory. For once, every species in the galaxy waited together. Rivals and enemies. Predators and prey all held their breath. And then came the moment. The Terran supercarrier plunged into the heart of the Black Suns. Its weapons roared with everything they had left. Its escorts bled fire. Its drones swarmed like locusts. And at its core, a weapon older than the Council itself was unleashed. A white star ignited where the enemy's throne had been. The darkness shattered for a long time. There was nothing but static. No one knew if the Terrans had survived.
No one
knew if the enemy was truly gone. The Council chamber sat in silence. Delegates gripping their seats, eyes wide. Refugees wept, unsure if they cried for salvation or loss. Then, across the void, a signal broke through. Clear calm. Terran, the darkness is ended. The galaxy is free. Remember who struck for you. And silence again. The Council celebrated. But its power was broken. Every empire knew the truth. It was not the Council that saved them. It was Earth. On core worlds, statues were already being planned not of Council heroes, but of silent Terran warships. On refugee stations, songs spread about the day when humanity struck and the galaxy's darkness shattered. But among the wise, fear still lingered. Because humanity had not promised friendship, they had not promised peace. They had only promised the end of the darkness, and they had delivered. In the archives, Zix replayed the Terran signal again and again. "Remember who struck for you?" The words were not comfort, they were a warning. Merritt stood behind him, her voice quiet, heavy. "The galaxy has survived. But now we live in their shadow. Humanity has saved us, but at what cost?" Far beyond council eyes, the silent Armada drifted in the void. The Terran supercarrier, scarred but alive, moved slowly toward the edge of the galaxy. On its bridge, an admiral looked out into the stars and spoke to no one in particular. "The enemy is gone, but the galaxy will never forget, nor will we." The stars burned bright again. But beneath their light, a new truth settled like a weight across every world when humanity strikes. The galaxy itself must bow. The end.